Very, very late. And yeah, sorry. Moving something out the way. I think I'm losing my voice, so about to cut this short. But we'll see how this go. Um, the topic is, do you feel safe where you live? Um, this is a reference to what's going on in DC and the talk of plans of extending uh, extra policing into problematic cities across the nation. Places like Chicago and Detroit and St. Louis and Memphis and Baltimore, which is right next door to DC. I'm sure most people, um, regardless of what you feel about the situation, are at least familiar with the fact that uh, that um, President Trump administration did a federal takeover of DC police and has given them the wherewithal to do some more policing in parts of these throughout major areas of DC. And it's funny of the backlash to that. And as I've mentioned before, it's only controversial because he did it. If Obama did it, everyone would have been given a standing ovation, telling him thank you for fighting the crime going on in the city. But there is a knee jerk reaction to anything that Trump does, anything. So, like I was telling a friend yesterday or earlier today, whatever, he could literally do everything that progressives want, and they would still hate him for it just by virtue of the fact that he did it. Um, so I see people coming into the chat room slowly. What's up to everyone? Um, again, my name is Just A Contrarian, and like I said, the title is "Do you feel safe where you live?" And like I said, this is in relation to the recent federal takeover of police in DC and how they've extended their policing throughout the city, which originally the DC mayor was against. Then she later acknowledged, yeah, we actually do need it. Uh, apparently, they could use hundreds of more police on their force. Hundreds. Hundreds. So, this is actually a welcome thing for the DC police. Like, they are welcoming it. And if you watch the news, it looks like everyone in DC is demonstrating against it. And it's just not true. And I've talked about this in a few YouTube shorts that I posted. And I've said, hey, a lot of these people protesting aren't even native DC residents. These are people who commute to DC, or they're people who live in the suburbs of DC, like in Montgomery County and Prince George's County, or Howard County, or in Fairfax County in Virginia, Loudoun County, Prince William County, so forth. Most of them aren't actual DC residents. The thing is, a lot of actual black DC residents are for it because they're tired of these YNs just ruining their community. For those who don't know what YN means, it means a young ninja, and we know what ninja means. It's basically the It's basically the new term for thug. They say YN now. And by the way, that was a term they gave themselves. Not this. That term did not come from the older folks. Like in my generation, they called us thugs, but we didn't call ourselves thugs. We just appropriated the term after it was labeled upon us. Whereas YN, they named themselves that. North Star says kids aren't afraid of jail. They see it as an accomplishment. What's up, Jay? What's going on, bro? Um, well, North Star, I don't think that's the case. What I think is the case is they're not punishing the kids. They know they can get away with these things, like here in Baltimore. They know they can get away with it. That they'll be taken to to the juvenile bookings and sit there until their parents come get them, and that's pretty much it. They will keep committing crimes because they don't see consequences to it. If they were punished, if they were given the same penalties as an adult for their crimes, well, they wouldn't be so. It would still happen, but they will be less bold about it. They don't care, particularly here in Baltimore and DC, because there's a lot of look. Mayor Brandon Scott is a black mayor, and he said that basically Trump was being racist because he's only targeting cities where they are run by black Democrats. He doesn't realize that he's telling on himself with that. Trump isn't coming after these cities because of the black leaders. He's coming at these cities because they are the worst in the country, which happen to be run by black Democratic leaders, which shows that these black Democratic leaders are failing their communities. So it's very ironic to say that he's being racist. What is being racist is the what he wants people to do, which is to overlook the incompetence of these black Democratic leaders, the acceptance of low expectations. So we don't give them a pass because they're black leaders. Like, no, you are you are leading these cities into damnation. And so then his other excuse is, well, Baltimore's been bad before I was even born. Yes, but now that you are the leader of said city, you assume responsibility for it, whether it is in a good state or a bad state. So I don't want to hear, oh, you're only 41 years old, or however old Brandon Scott is, the mayor of Baltimore City. Likewise with DC. Like I haven't heard her say that, but both she and Scott were basically saying, oh, well, the cities aren't that bad. It's easy to say that these cities aren't that bad when you live in you live in a gated community surrounded by personal security, and wherever you go across the city, you are escorted by highly armed security detail. I would feel safe anywhere in Baltimore too if everywhere I went I was escorted by security detail. I'm like, oh, there ain't nothing wrong with being here in Penn North. Penn North is perfectly safe. There ain't nothing wrong with being down here in Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill, perfectly safe. There ain't nothing wrong with being down here in Park Heights. Park Heights is perfectly safe. So yeah, they can miss me with that. And Governor Westmore, the governor of Maryland, is singing the same tune, saying it's not that bad. That crime has gone down, and what they're saying is very misleading and just patently false. By the way, North Star says they need to be more strict like Texas. Indeed, um, Jay says try Canada if you take in poor liberal leadership. If you're talking about no, we got enough of it over here, Jay. Like all these, almost every most of the major cities are run by liberal Democrats, and their stance on crime has made it worse. So, uh, the way I see it is that they're being misleading with the statistics. Like they're telling people, well, crime has gone down significantly in the past few decades. If that's the case, then why do people feel less safe? And there's a reason for that. People is not sub, so the mayor and the governor will have you believe that the reason people don't feel safe is just subjective. No, the reason why people don't feel safe is that yes, violent crime has gone down, not just locally but nationally. However, within those cities, quality of life crimes have gone up. It is those quality of life crimes as opposed to violent crimes, which are just right there in your face. But quality of life crimes are what make you feel safe. Un, sorry, what makes you feel unsafe in your community. When you go outside and people are breaking into cars, when you see people shoplifting, when you know you're seeing carjackings and people getting um, held up for money and stuff like that, or you see homeless people being a public nuisance. That is quality of life crime. That is the sort of stuff that makes your community feel unsafe. But it's not just that. They're also lying because as much as they were saying, well, Baltimore and DC aren't that bad, the new FBI crime data came out as of 2024 and is picturing a whole different picture than what the mayor of DC, the mayor of Baltimore, and the governor of Maryland are saying. Baltimore right now is considered number three, is considered the third most violent city in the country. And according to US News and World Report, based on that crime data, they ranked it the number fourth most dangerous city in the country. So it's number three so it's number three for the most violent crimes and homicide. And according to U.S. News and World Report, it's considered the fourth most dangerous city. D.C. is at what, number 10 or something like that. And what you gotta realize is that's bad because D.C. is a small city. It's smaller than Baltimore. If people are unaware, if you just by if you're looking at both by size is smaller and by population it's smaller, which means crime is more concentrated, which makes it more dangerous. When you have crime concentrated in a smaller area, it makes it worse because that means there's more violence per capita, right? So if you're looking at crime in absolute numbers versus relative numbers, so there are cities more violent than DC if you're looking at the absolute numbers. But if you're looking at it in relative numbers, which is per capita, DC is one of the most violent cities in the country. It's like number 10, I think, or number nine, something like that. So it was justified. And the only reason Trump hasn't extended what he's doing is because DC falls within the purview of the federal government. It always has. Some people don't realize this, but until the 70s, DC did not have a local government. It didn't have a municipal government. Um, it was granted by law um, the ability to have a city council and a mayor back in the 70s. For those who don't know, however, this, despite they were given a city government back in the 70s, it was still within the purview of the federal government that Congress could veto any law passed by the city government. Federal so Congress still has veto power over any law passed by DC city government. On top of that, again, the the president has also the the ability to call to do a federal takeover of DC because, as people forget to realize, DC is not a state. They had the ability to vote for statehood several years in a row, and they turned it down. They had they it was up for statehood several times, and they chose not to do so. So it is still just a federal district, meaning every all of DC falls within the purview of the federal government. And again, hello to everyone coming in. Again, my topic is, do you feel safe where you live? And for me, I don't. I don't even live in Baltimore City. I live in the outskirts of Baltimore. I live in the Baltimore suburbs. But the thing is, there's so much concentrated crime in Baltimore City that has spilled over into the suburbs. Every day there's something going on. Like the quality of life crimes I mentioned just a few moments ago is spilled over here into the county. Every night there are little young hooligans, YNs, that go from car to car trying to break into their car to steal stuff. Just 2 weeks ago, someone was called themselves breaking into the my neighbor's car across the street, right across the street from us, and the neighbor was actually sitting in his car with his girlfriend, watching a video on his phone, and the guy just one of these little young dummies opened the door while he was in there, and when he saw him, he started fighting him. Two of these little YNs were fighting my neighbor and had him on the ground until his friend arrived and shot twice in the air, shot his gun, and that freaked me out because this was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I didn't even know what was going on. So, as soon as I heard those two gunshots, I, I leapt from the floor. I got off the bed and went to the ground just in case there were more shots, and I didn't know what direction it was coming from. I just knew that it was very close because it was literally on my street, right, like it was literally right across the street. So then I found out that's what happened from my sister, and I'm like, wow, okay. And I'm like, why am I the only one in the house that heard that? I'm like, they're not. Well, my family is not the best when it comes to being situationally aware. Because I was look, I don't care if I'm asleep. If I hear gunshots, I'm hitting it, I'm hitting the deck. I mean, I'm military trained, so I know to hit the ground. But yeah, I immediately got on the ground as soon as I heard the gunshots. But and then a week before that, I'm doing a late night run because it's cooler to run at night, and I literally run down the block where these guys again are trying to break into someone's car, and the alarm is going off, but they still trying to break it open. And I'm like, what the hell? And then as soon as they see me, they they run off because they think I'm private security, which our HOA has promised us for the past 3 years now to get some private security. They still haven't done it. That's why I think HOAs are full of shit. But excuse my language. Uh, trying to be family friendly here. But yeah, I mean, they hold off thinking I was private security when they saw me in my reflective vest. But I was just running down the street. I saw what they were doing, and I'm like, that's pretty brazen because like they're literally right in front of someone's apartment complex, breaking into their apartment, but no one's paying attention. Mad Acoustic says all HOAs are horrible. I do hate HOAs, but I'll be honest, not all of them are horrible. For some of them, they are. I guess some people do welcome HOAs to keep people from doing stuff that would bring down the property values of their community. But yeah, I just I don't think we need them. I think HOAs are a problem in the. I think HOAs were a solution in need of a problem. That's how I look at them. They to me HOAs are like are basically tantamount to that. They, I mean, because everyone I know absolutely despises them. Yeah, I mean, I again, yeah, most people do, but I do hear from some homeowners who also say that some of the rules that these HOAs have in place keep some of the how do I put it? Some of the less refined homeowners from doing dumb shit that, that would bring down property values in their neighborhood. You know, like doing dumb stuff like I want to paint pink, I want to put polka dots all over my house and park my car in the yard, stuff, dumb stuff like that, and let my dog just shit all over the streets. So, I mean, HOAs do fulfill a purpose, but that it's I think it's often just something stupid that um, property management puts in place, particularly in like places like townhomes and other sorts of like um, sort of like housing developments like that. Like in a lot of housing developments, I think property management puts in these HOAs basically to act as their guard, their guard dogs. And I think that's why a lot of people despise them. They put up a lot of unnecessary rules, and then when you do actually need them to do something, they won't do the stuff you need them to do. Like when we're all always having these parking wars on my on my street because we literally have a next door neighbor who's been here for almost 3 years, and they still don't respect other people's parking spaces. And under this with the HOA, when they came under new management, now all of a sudden you can't get people removed from your parking places. Now we gotta call the police instead of calling the towing company. They used to come out and handle that sort of stuff. Or they cut down a shitload of trees in our community, trees that gave a lot of good shade during the summer, and in which like maybe the kids would play around during the when they would come outside, and their purpose allegedly was to open up the community more so that people could see more of the near do wells lurking about in the neighborhood. But then they never installed private security as they promised as well. So what was the point of just cutting down all these trees to quote unquote open up the neighborhood for what? I was like, I'm a cynic. I think they just cut down these trees just for the lumber and sold it to a lumber company. Almost as the world scares me, my job, my girlfriend, everybody. Well, I'm not talking about the whole world. I'm just talking about where you live locally. Like, do you feel safe there? Because I mean, we can't, you know, you can't worry about the whole world. That's just an untenable position. Like, I can't. I'm not going to care about what's going on in Djibouti. So, but yeah, I've heard of. Well, I heard some parts of Atlanta are good, some aren't. Um, but yeah, it like I said, my friend and I were talking 2 days ago. We was like, man, we like it's like, man, I wish Trump could come to could do a federal takeover of Baltimore I was like, man, I told my friend Marcus, I was like, dude, I was like, if Trump takes over the police force in Baltimore and has them and sends in the National Guard like he did in DC, I was like, I'll be downtown at the harbor the very next day, chilling, because I will actually feel safe for once. Like as it stands, like you don't know, guys, you don't know how many freaking EDC weapons I carry on me every day whenever I leave the house, and that's even just to go to the supermarket. Like the supermarket is like a walk up the street, so I don't bother driving. I'll just walk up there, and it's like, dude, I'm wearing like my tack pen, my my tack light, couple of couple of blades, some other things, and it's like I shouldn't have to do that. I would willingly welcome walking around Singapore and Tokyo where it's illegal to have weapons on you. Save out, I would still carry my tack light on me because that's pretty much legal anywhere. I would still carry my tack light, my tack pen, because you can take those anywhere. But outside of those, like I would feel completely comfortable walking anywhere around Singapore, anywhere around Tokyo, or most of Japan for generally. I wish I could say that about Baltimore or DC or New York or Philly, but they're shitholes. Again, excuse my French. Uh, Now, New York isn't that bad because it's been gentrified. DC, I was unaware it was still bad because after it went so much gentrification back in the 2000s, it became as expensive as living in Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, well, just to put this in perspective, like Brooklyn became more expensive than Manhattan, and like DC is like if you lived in those in either of those places, like whether New York City or DC, like you either had to be rich or you needed to live with roommates to survive. Because no one on the average income of 51,000 is going to be able to have their own place, neither in New York nor DC. It just ain't happening. Um, if so, you must not need to eat food. But in any case, um, yeah, what happened was a lot of despite the gentrification and the years of them pushing out the poor people into more crusty parts of the city and or pushing them out to the suburbs like here in Baltimore. What happened was after the pandemic, it a lot of things changed for the worse. Things got bad again. Not as bad as like pre. I, I won't say it got as bad as the '90s, but it's gotten kind of bad. But I mean, like it, it's bad, bro. Like I said, every night, right around this time, there's people walking around my neighborhood trying to break into people's cars to steal stuff. Every night. I bet you if I took a late night run right now, I would find some. Um, I hear gunshots, fireworks sometimes, and I do know the difference. um, and compared to Baltimore City, that's still relatively safe. Out in the city, it is way worse. Like, in some places that are as bad as it was in the '90s in Baltimore, where it got so bad at some points back in the '90s, like kids, you know, parents used to have their kids sleep in the bathtub you know, just because that would be the safest place for them to be at night, so they wouldn't get accidentally shot through, through stray bullets. It's gotten that bad again in Baltimore. Baltimore has been, uh, and in the tourist areas is even if and what's making it bad is the tourist areas are unsafe. If you make the tourist areas unsafe, everyone's gonna like no one's gonna want to be in the city because the tourist areas are supposed to be the places that are well protected. But in the tourist areas like Fells Point, Canton, uh, the harbor, the inner harbor, these are the places that are the touristy areas that are supposed to be safe. But if people don't even feel safe in the touristy areas, then it's definitely not going to be safe in the residential areas where there's less policing and less accountability, um, by other people in the community. But if every night you got kids fighting and shooting and robbing and shoplifting in Fells Point, which is a prominent place in downtown Baltimore where the bars are. It's like it's the thriving it's the thriving late like night scene for Baltimore. And I don't even party in Baltimore, so I've only been down to Fells Point like twice. And I don't mean recently. I mean as an adult. Like I didn't really party in Baltimore when I was younger. When I was younger, I used to always party in DC, especially as I was going to college in DC. But I didn't I never really rocked with the scene here in Baltimore. Like I've been down to the harbor several times, but aside from that, mm-mm. And like I said, you not people outside of Baltimore who live in Maryland already have a fear of Baltimore because of its reputation as being a violent city. That's here in Maryland. I already know that people outside of Maryland are even already think ill of Baltimore as well because of shows like um, Homicide back in the day. There was a show Homicide. Then there was the HBO show. There was two crime shows. There was Homicide, Life on the Street. Then there was another show called I think it was called On the Corner or in the corner or on the corner, something like that. And then there was the HBO show The Wire, and people kept people outside of Baltimore will always ask, is it really as bad as the show The Wire? And we'd be like, yeah, yeah, it really is. That's realistic. But Homicide, The Corner, and The Wire were three shows depicting the the crime and poverty and misery in Baltimore, and they were very realistic. Like I said, I'm glad I haven't lived in the city since I was 7 years old. Um, and like I go into the city, I would commute back into the city for work when I was working in the city, or when I was visiting family. But I did not. I haven't. You know, I haven't really been involved in the city for a long time since I was a teenager when I used to hang out with my cousin. Um, and that was only be and the only reason and I was living I was living in the DC suburbs at the time. I was hanging out with my cousin. I was going to college. However, I would hang out with him on the weekends just because um, I wanted to get away from my father at the time, who was being a douchebag. That's a whole different topic for another day. But yeah, um, I I I avoid Baltimore as much as possible. Other than like cool things like going to Comic Con, and then they had Otakon for which used to be fun, which was a anime convention. It moved to DC, which is where it had a bigger venue because it was doing so well actually in Baltimore that it was overly crowded. However, like the numbers dropped during sort of the Freddie Gray riots 10 years ago, if people remember that. But 9 years ago. And that was the last time I went to Otakon because I haven't went to the one in DC. I do plan on going there though. But yeah, I'm not getting too much. Let me check my chat filter here. I might have missed some messages. Let me check these. No, I don't think I missed any. What's up, Sam? But yeah, I might end this here unless anyone else has any comments they want to talk about where they live, how they, if whether they feel safe where they live. If not, you guys can, always take it to the comments and continue the conversation there in the comments. I do check the comments, but I've started to learn not to respond to them. And I'm very thirsty. I'm about to grab another. I guess this is about a liter and a half. I don't think this is a gallon. I think this is like a liter and a half. I don't know the exact volume, but I'm gonna fill this up, drink some more water, finish watching whatever I was watching a moment ago before I go to bed. I just wanted to get to a live because I hadn't done one in like 4 days. I wanted to originally do a live with the wife tonight, but she's not feeling well, so I didn't want to have her on camera, and she's not feeling well. So maybe later this week. And then I got some other stuff I want to do. I'm probably dropping a video soon where I respond to a troll, which is why I say I'm going to just avoid responding to nasty comments because doesn't pay off. So in any case, guys, I'm out, but I'll give it a few seconds if someone actually wanted to comment on the topic as far as do they feel safe where they live and do they agree with the DC with the federal takeover of DC with National Guard and the federal the feds taking over the DC police. I agree with them both, and again, like I said, I wish my friend Marcus and I both said we wish that Trump could come in and send in the National Guard to Baltimore because, like I said, if he did, I would be hanging out in the harbor the very next day having fun because I know I would feel safe downtown if he had National Guard sent out there. Last time I saw the National Guard in Baltimore was during the pandemic when they were helping people, get their vaccinations. And that I think they were mostly Air National Guard, um, I guess their medical unit, but they were good folks. I I think most people welcomed them there. It's just funny that people don't welcome them because of Trump, even though New York Governor Kathy Hochul sent in the National Guard earlier this year to New York City to patrol the subway, and everyone welcomed that because they said that they felt they felt unsafe on the New York City subway. Um, but when Trump does it, then it's a problem. So it's very, I don't like the partisan games because people want to feel safe and acting like it's like he's being fascist or authoritarian by doing something that if the other side did it would be welcome just shows political hypocrisy, which is one of the major reasons why I'm a political independent. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat, and I'm neither liberal nor conservative. I'm a what you can call a classical liberal. The funny thing is, the classical liberals are actually on the right, on the political right. So, um, if that if that seems weird to you, look up what classical liberal is. I might just do a video on that. Well, I've talked about it before, but I can do a separate video on that. Anyway, thank you to everyone who watched. Thank you, Sam. I'm out, guys. Again, uh, if people want to respond, like keep the conversation going in the comments. And if you like this, um, please think about donating by sending me a super thanks. You you can choose what you want to donate. Any amount is fine. Uh, or you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. The links are in the description. I do drink coffee all the time, actually, so that's not a gimmick. Uh, or you can just send me a cash app, and that's link is in the description to it. $ just a contrarian, all one word. $ just a contrarian. Other than that, I'm out, guys. Or if you want to show me for future support, you can become a member. I do have some membership only content, members only content behind the paywall for the members. My members are contrarians, so um, look out for that. And I do have some merch on the way, so keep your eyes open for that. You'll see it posted on my channel when I have it up. Talk to you guys later.